That.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the We Like Football podcast. This is officially episode 2. We didn't think the first one sucked as bad as, we thought it might. Kind of the same reason that we did a second one. Here with my buddy, Andy Watkins. I am Hayden Yarashunas. Andy, how are you, buddy?
Hey there. What's going on, pal?
What a week of football. What we got for you today, rather than try to go through some of the different stories and maybe past versus present and things like that, we're just going to kind of focus on the games from this past week, from week 14 in the NFL. We'll kind of go through some of the headlines, talk about some of the games and what we were able to witness throughout the weekend. Certainly an entertaining weekend in football, Andy.
Oh, to say the very least. I guess I'll let you take the lead here, but before we get started, I want to thank my mom and girlfriend and John Borisuk and whoever else might be joining us here on this journey. You've heard of Monday morning quarterbacking. Get ready for Tuesday evening offensive linemening, baby.
I love it. Let's do it, man. I absolutely love it. So let's get right into the games, and we'll kind of come back to some other stuff as we go on. So the obvious one that we start with, probably the game of the year, or at least up top with the candidates of the game of the year. The Ravens defeated the Browns last night 47-42. The storylines within the game were absolutely ridiculous. So the one that I think is kind of on everybody's mind and has been all over television all day. Lamar Jackson exits the game with cramps in the third quarter and heads to the locker room. Stays in the locker room. Trace McSorley comes out, and right before the 2-minute warning, Trace McSorley on a play slips and obviously hurts his knee, right? Is down for a couple minutes. And Lamar Jackson had been slipping all night. I don't know if it was just the quarterbacks, if there was field conditions that were weird or whatever, but Lamar Jackson exits the tunnel like a freaking action hero, runs back onto the sideline, picks up his helmet, goes in on the next play, which just happens to be a fourth down, right? And delivers a score, right, to Marquise Brown. The Ravens end up going for 2. They get it. J.K. Dobbins on a jet sweep kind of runs over Anderson Dejo. And Cleveland kind of on a last-ditch kind of schoolyard bullshit effort, tossing the ball around with like a couple seconds on the clock, ends up giving up a safety, which brings the final score to 47-42. Definitely a wildly entertaining game, Andy.
To say the very least. I know there's been a lot of jokes made about Lamar Jackson maybe pulling a Paul Pierce, having to make a bowel movement, if you will. I doubt that's the case. I do believe he was recently COVID positive. I think that's why he missed the Steelers game a few weeks ago. To have underlying symptoms is not unusual, even after the fact, even after he's had negative tests. To think that maybe he was cramping is not that far-fetched. Marvelous effort by him, by the Ravens, by both teams, really. It was I don't want to say it, but it was kind of an emphatic statement by the Ravens to, show that they're still the AFC power that they were last year, at least on the offensive side of the ball, because they certainly took the air out of the ball all night long. Lamar Jackson was dynamic, had over 100 yards on the ground, as well as a strong outing through the air with relatively limited attempts. But we spoke about this a week or two ago. That's their offense. That's how they play best. Browns, hell of a fight. I think the commentator said last night they're not the same old Browns, and that was readily apparent. Lamar Jackson came out, ripped their heart out, and Baker Mayfield was able to lead them right back down the field. Just credit to Justin Tucker, ice in his veins as usual. Great game. I hate to say it, I think both of these teams, though, won't win the division, are probably better than the division-leading Steelers right now. We can get to them later on, but as you said, just marvelous game. Reminder why we all love watching football, why we here at We Like Football, like football.
I love the shameless plug. I had intended on doing one as well. I'm glad you beat me to it. That was awesome. Yep. You mentioned Justin Tucker, ice in his veins, makes a 55-yard field goal that actually put Baltimore up 45-42 after, again, that the Lamar Jackson return in triumphant fashion. Some other stats from that game. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. I mean, first of all, the Ravens lead the league in rushing, but J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards combined 20 carries, 102 yards, 3 touchdowns. Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown had over 120 yards receiving. Marquise Brown had that touchdown there at the end. as well. If you look at the other side, Baker Mayfield went 28 for 47 with 343 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick that was absolutely a hell of a play. It really was a hell of a play on that interception. And also had 5 carries for 23 yards. And then, not to take any credit away from the Browns run game as well, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt combined for 115 yards, 3 touchdowns. Again, no shortage of fireworks. That AFC North is a division that's going to be a lot of fun to watch with those 3 teams that we mentioned. And then, of course, when Cincinnati gets Joe Burrow back and healthy, it's going to be a fun division to watch for a while.
Yeah, as you said, two very evenly matched dynamic offenses, a lot of fireworks, a great show, and I think we can look forward to a lot more of that coming up in the AFC playoffs because they're stacked across the board. Hopefully both of those teams get in. They both deserve to, but they will have some worthy competition. All that said, I'll let you take us away to probably your favorite subject of the week. Go ahead. Tell me what you got.
So I have written behind me in true Simpsons fashion that I will not talk about the Eagles for an hour. I absolutely could. If you have any interest, hit me up. I would love to kind of talk your ear off about it. The Eagles snap a 9-game winning streak for the Saints, and for themselves snap a 4-game losing streak. It was a total of 42 days without a win, but who's counting? Obviously, the storyline in this game with Jalen Hurts coming in and making his first NFL start against like the second defense in the NFL, comes out, looks like a competent quarterback. The Eagles kind of take the lead early, go up 17-0 at half. Would have been 20-0 at half if Jake Elliott makes a 22-yard field goal right there at the end of the half. They come back out in the second half. The Saints start playing a little bit better, start to outplay the Eagles in my opinion, but they hold them off there towards the end. So I don't want to exaggerate anything, but it's really obvious to see that Jalen Hurts is a combination of Michael Vick and Jesus Christ himself. He's just fantastic, or at least that's what social media tells me. No, in all seriousness, there's no reason to overreact. He had a very, very good game. 17 for 30 in the air with 167 yards, 1 touchdown, also added 106 yards on the ground, and a fumble that almost cost them the game, which I might touch on a little bit later if there's time. But it's obvious that the Eagles offense looked significantly better with Jalen Hurts. You can see that when a defense needs to respect your quarterback play, not just with his legs, but just respect the fact that your quarterback can make plays, it opens up so many other options for your offense.
Yes. Of course, it's a small sample size, and oftentimes we say with these, rookie second-year signal callers, the teams don't have a lot of tape on. They do tend to get off to these strong starts before defenses start to figure them out. Nonetheless, as you said, it was readily apparent that the rushing threat he provided opened up a lot more opportunities, not only for Miles Sanders, but for Hurts himself, as well as his weapons in the passing game, few though they may be. And of course, the Saints had a marvelous defense all year long. The fact that he went out there and had a strong showing against, an upper tier defense is not for nothing. You could say maybe with Drew Brees it would have been a different game, perhaps, but Taysom Hill hasn't been a slouch. He's kept him in the pole position in the conference. It's probably too little, too late for Philly to make any sort of run, but I think this closing stretch is a golden opportunity for Jalen Hurts to sort of entrench himself as the starter moving forward, and you can't give him anything but glowing reviews after his first outing.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, it probably is too little, too late for the division. What a freaking story it would be. Could you imagine if they won out and win the NFC East? Just poetic. It's not going to happen. Just some stats from that game. So Miles Sanders had 14 carries for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of his carries was an 82-yard touchdown run, which this is just sort of another example of what Jalen Hurts kind of provides for your offense. They showed in the when they broke down the film, like kind of on the broadcast, they showed that it was a kind of a zone read type of play, zone to the left with a bubble screen to trips on the right. Jalen Hurts kind of just hesitating and holding that mesh point with Miles Sanders. gets the play side linebacker out of position just enough to where Miles Sanders has a lane and is able to kind of rip off that huge run. I don't know that I don't know that Jalen Hurts necessarily sparks the defense, but the defense played super well as well. 5 total sacks, and like I mentioned, shut out the Saints in the first half. Not to discredit Taysom Hill, like you mentioned, he's 3-1 over his last 4 games with Drew Brees being out. Hopefully he comes back for the Saints' chances at getting to the Super Bowl. But just for the Saints, and then if you got anything else. So Taysom Hill had 324 total yards, 2 passing touchdowns and an interception. Alvin Kamara continues to just be an anomaly. He had 50 yards on the ground and 44 in the air, 1 touchdown, and that's a quiet game for him. And then just notably coming out of that game before we wrap it up, Rodney McLeod tore his ACL. Darius Slay is in concussion protocol, and Avonte Maddox is day-to-day with an ankle injury. So obviously some concern on the back end for the Eagles.
Yeah, it's that'll be rough to overcome in the secondary. As you said, the front 7 is stacked. They've invested copious amounts of money into it. You would hope it would be, but they did manage to come through in spite of Kamara shining as he usually does. But I think in summation, Jalen Hurts, bravo, fantastic audition. I look forward to watching him again in the future. He opens up their offense. Another team with a strong rushing attack, the Tennessee Titans, more or less imposed their will on an AFC South foe in the Jaguars. Not unexpected. Jacksonville is, I believe, 1-12 now. Tennessee, though, it was just the kind of outing you'd expect from them, especially as we near the home stretch here. They're going to be in a dogfight with Indianapolis for that division. They're keeping pace now, of course, on the back of Derrick Henry, who was his usually fantastic self, 26 carries, 215 yards, 2 scores. Ryan Tannehill is more than a game manager. His numbers speak for themselves. Another strong effort from him, 80% completion, 200 yards, 2 scores. A.J. Brown is a force at his size. Corey Davis is coming around along with him. I believe they're both around 800-900 yards this year. So Tennessee, really strong effort across the board, holding Jacksonville to 10 points, and both of their quarterbacks to 250 yards on 50 attempts, 5 yards an attempt. That's strong outing from the defense.
It is a strong outing from the defense that has, at least compared to the offense, been at least a weak spot for the team, again, relative to the offense. It's always amazing what Derrick Henry can kind of provide. And I mean, like, the 200 yards is just absolutely absurd, especially when the offense runs through him. He's not surprising anybody when he touches the ball.
No.
Yep. So on the other side, James Robinson had 12 carries for 67 yards, 91 yards on the ground. Again, strong outing from the Titans defense, kind of bouncing back and getting back on track after the loss against the Browns last week. That was made a little bit closer than maybe the game felt throughout its entirety, right? Came within, I believe it was a score last week, but certainly nice to see them get a win, kind of get back on track and gear up to make a playoff run.
They got a good shot at winning the division. Closing stretch is manageable. They have the Lions this upcoming Sunday, followed by the Packers the next Sunday night. Looking forward to that one. They close with the Texans. You would think 2-1 would be very much manageable and could well win them the division. I do look forward to that Packers game, seeing them go up against another, a worthy adversary. Tennessee, no slouch. They got to the AFC title game last year and gave KC quite a scare before, obviously Patrick Mahomes imposed his will. Of course, their first order of business is to hold off the Colts in the AFC South. As I mentioned previously, the Colts are keeping pace with them. Why don't you go ahead and talk a little more about their win against the Raiders?
Yep. So we are staying in the division. It really is going to be kind of a fun race towards the end, just in the AFC playoff picture as a whole. But the Colts, it seems like they beat up the Raiders a little bit this week. They beat the Raiders 44-27. Phillip Rivers, father of 24, went 19 of 28 for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. Another team, I mean, you talk about a run game that's really going to kind of translate to the playoffs, kind of like the Titans did last year when nobody wanted to play them, right? The Colts rushed for 212 combined yards. Jonathan Taylor was responsible for 150 of those yards, as well as 2 touchdowns. I like Hines in the backfield there as well. I really like their rushing attempt out there in Indianapolis. T.Y. Hilton had 5 receptions for 86 yards, 2 scores. Pretty solid day for the Colts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned who'd you say, Nyheim Hines? Jordan Wilkins is another nice back, but I think Jonathan Taylor's kind of emerging as the focal point of that offense, and I think that'll serve him well down the stretch. We know from his time at Wisconsin he could be a true workhorse, 3-down runner. Guy's got biceps like bowling balls. I think you pair him with Phillip Rivers, who was a little herky-jerky early in the year, has kind of settled down, become an efficient game manager, which hasn't always been his style, but I think he's playing well within the offense, the talent surrounding him. And then that's not to mention a strong defense led by Darius Leonard and Justin Houston, obviously. Indy kind of quietly has had one of the better defenses in the league all year long. Looking at their schedule down the stretch, it's not much more imposing than the Titans. They got Houston, Pittsburgh, and Jacksonville. 2 of those you would tend to favor Indy quite heavily. The Steelers have not been up to snuff lately. I think the Colts would probably be the favorite in that game as well. Looking at their schedule thus far, they split with the Titans, so it would go down to division record after that. With 2 division games left to play, it really could kind of be anyone's division yet, which is exciting.
It is, yeah. No, like I mentioned before, it is going to be a fun finish. Indianapolis is currently 6th in the league in yards allowed on defense. You mentioned one of the best ones in the league. Maybe a little quiet at first, not super quiet anymore, for sure. Kind of remaining in the AFC, or I'm sorry, I skipped over the what the Raiders did. Well, Derek Carr went 31 for 45 with 316 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Solid outing as far as yards and touchdowns. I didn't watch the game live, so I don't know if the picks had other factors in them, but what have you. And Nelson Aguilar, of course, is good when he is not playing for the Eagles. 5 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown. Okay. Staying in the AFC right now, and at least what I've been hearing a lot of today, and again, we'll make it a positive. The Bills are just rolling. A lot of folks have them kind of like, I have heard even talks of them being like almost a 1A to Kansas City. I don't buy it, or a 1B, I guess. I don't buy that. I think Kansas City is the clear favorite in the AFC and the NFL as a whole. But the Bills are certainly rolling right now. They beat the Steelers 26-15 on Sunday night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess we'll talk about it. The Steelers, as I've alluded to in the past, are banged the hell up. They were playing Avery Williamson and former Penn State safety Marcus Allen at middle linebacker. They were down their top 3, Devin Bush, Vince Williams, Robert Spillane. They were without Bud Dupree on the edge. Joe Hayden missed the game with a concussion. They lost several linemen during the game. That's not to discredit the Bills, because the Steelers, especially defensively, still made a game of it for a half before the Bills kind of imposed their will, their superior health at present. Josh Allen was fantastic navigating the pocket amid pressure. The Steelers brought plenty of it, frustratingly so. I'd say too much at times. I don't know if you watched the game, but they kind of sold out, bringing the house on Josh Allen. I don't think that was the right move given the injuries in the secondary. But I don't want to discredit the Bills. That was a strong win, and really kind of imposing win. They looked superior to the Steelers for the majority of that game. Josh Allen, we spoke about last week, is tremendous athlete, strong arm. His connection with Stephon Diggs in 1 year is spectacular. Those two I would say are one of the top 5 quarterback receiver tandems in the league right now. I don't even think there's much room for debate in that regard. Buffalo secondary, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Teron Johnson, Tre'Davious White. I mentioned 4th, for crying out loud. Are you kidding? They have a lot of playmakers on the back end. They'll be a tough out for any team in the AFC this year. I could babble on endlessly my despair over the Steelers. I hope they can just refocus. If they beat Cincy this week, they still win the division. I think then they probably have to think about resting some guys, getting healthy for the stretch run. This is still a talented team, but as I said, it's a banged up one. If they can't get healthy, they're not going to go far.
Yep, certainly banged up, and Sunday night was kind of almost a passing of the torch where the Steelers and the Chiefs were kind of in that 1-2 conversation in the AFC, and now it's at least trending towards the Bills. You mentioned Marcus Allen, the safety for the Steelers. Fun fact, he went to Dr. Henry A. Wise High School. That's in Maryland. I've been out there for a couple 7-on-7s, sat with their coaches at a couple of clinics. Good people, solid school. They're a very nice stadium. Continuing on with the Bills, to just kind of to wrap it up here. I don't know if you mentioned Josh Allen's stats from last night. I was making sure that I was correct in Marcus Allen going to Wise. I was paying attention to the important stuff, Andy.
Right, of course.
So Josh Allen went 24 for 43 with 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Stephon Diggs had 10 receptions for 130 yards and a touchdown. Gabriel Davis had a touchdown. The Bills rushed for 104 in total. Big Ben, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Steelers rushing attack continues to kind of be their Achilles heel. They rushed for a total of 47 yards. Juju Smith-Schuster and James Washington each with a touchdown. And then each team had 1 sack. Okay. I think that's all we got for the games, unless you wanted to throw anything else in there, Andy, that you saw Sunday, Monday, or we could just kind of keep this thing rolling here.
Keep it rolling.
Okay, so in the first 2 episodes, currently only one of those 2 episodes is live in public. The other one was kind of intimate for us to make sure that we didn't suck super bad. And I guess arguably we didn't. We're certainly cleaning some things up now. But in all 3 of the times that we've spoken together, we've sung the praises of DK Metcalf. I'm hoping that since we're kind of blowing up right now, I don't know if you've paid attention to our YouTube page, but I think our first episode, which was entirely too long, got like 18 views, and I'm pretty sure like 16 of them were from me. Also a couple likes, most of them are from me. And then we have a couple subscribers as well. But I do also have multiple accounts. So I'm kind of picking up the slack on everybody else, but maybe we can get DK Metcalf on here at some point. I'll reach out to his agent and see if we can kind of make that happen. He's probably heard of us by now.
I would think so. Maybe we have to get nose rings, then we'd be kind of like kindred spirits. We already both are similar in physical acumen. I think DK would respect that about us. But I think more facial piercings would probably strengthen the bond, get him to appear here on We Like Football. DK, I'm sure, would agree with the prevailing sentiment of us fine folks, which is, again, that we like football.
Yep. And it seems like he likes football because he's really freaking good at it, man. He is really good at it. So last week we compared DK Metcalf to Calvin Johnson. That was sort of a thing that was going around. A couple different people had talked about it, and we just kind of threw in our 2 cents. But taking it sort of a step further and comparing DK Metcalf to Randy Moss. I mean, we remember Randy Moss had just an absurd rookie season. So kind of comparing their numbers through the first 29 games. Andy, take it away, buddy.
Well, I think it's important to compare them because, we talked about Calvin Johnson last time, and DK's numbers were actually superior to Megatron's. Randy Moss here does outshine him a little bit. DK, through his first 29 games, 127 receptions, 2,080 yards, 17 touchdowns. Of course, fantastic numbers. Randy Moss, however, in the same 29-game sample size, his first 29 games, 135 catches, 2,533 yards, 24 touchdowns. And I don't mean to I'm not pointing out the disparity to discredit DK Metcalf. Obviously, we said he's a top 5 receiver. It does kind of shine a light on just how transcendent a talent Randy Moss was. But I think the relative closeness of the numbers kind of just emphasizes what DK Metcalf has managed to do in such a brief span of time. I included his combine numbers to compare with Randy's here, just to give you a sense of what kind of freaks the 2 of these guys were. And also how DK Metcalf, with 30 pounds on Randy Moss, is arguably an even better athlete. at least in terms of testing. So let's just jump into it. DK Metcalf at the combine measured in 6'3", 228 pounds, which that's a big old boy running a 4.3 340 and with a 40.5-inch vertical. Now Randy Moss also 6'3", a little slighter, 194 pounds, but he ran a 4.3 840, which is a hair slower than DK Metcalf. And his vertical 33 inches was kind of underwhelming. I just included it to again note the disparity. You would, I guess, Randy, at least in that one drill, kind of was better on field than testing, because we've seen Randy Moss guy for balls. There's a reason somebody gets mossed.
You got mossed. Absolutely.
I kind of am waxing poetic here, but if you have anything to add, I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, I like many. I would think many football fans have never stopped and looked at Randy Moss's numbers specifically through 29 games. It's a really weird kind of thing to look at, but that's where we are in DK Metcalf's career, so that's why we're looking at it through that lens. But for Randy Moss to have 8 more receptions and then like 450 more yards and 7 more touchdowns, like, I mean, it's just a testament to how good he really was, right? But with DK being, again, relatively close, I just kind of mentioned the differences between them, but with being relatively close and being in the same breath as Randy Moss, you're probably doing something right. You're probably doing something right. DK, buddy, we love you. Come on the show, talk with us, bring the binky, all that stuff. We'll be happy to get your perspective on some of our praise towards you.
And Randy, the invitation goes to you as well. I love Rand University, Rand, West Virginia. I'm into all that. Moss this, Moss that. Everybody one clap.
I did it at the same time. It's just the call is a little bit off, but we're gonna pretend like it was badass and we did that. Maybe we could even add in like some effects where there's like a light and I don't know. All right, cool. So moving right along, so we're going to get past the games from this weekend. As we sort of wind down the NFL season, there's 3 weeks left. Obviously, the playoff picture is sort of rounding out now. And again, there's a lot of good races. There's a lot of teams that are still alive. There's a lot of teams that could make a push or at least arguably win a playoff game, even if it's a little bit surprising. So this next segment, we're going to take a second to talk about who wouldn't shock us by winning the Super Bowl. Now, just as sort of a disclaimer before we get into it, this is not a segment where we are actually anticipating these teams winning the Super Bowl, given all of the circumstances and the roads that they would have to take and things like that. We're not saying that the teams that we mentioned here are going to win the Super Bowl. What we're saying is that we get to February 8th, pretty special day. It's my birthday. We get to February 8th, 2021. Right. And the men in black kind of pop out of their cars, use that little like flashlight thing, go and just hit us in the eyes. And we forget everything back to this point on December. What are we at? December 15th. Right. And somebody tells us, hey, Team X won the Super Bowl. These are the teams that we would be like, oh, man, that's not out of the question. That's not crazy surprising. There's a couple that we would like to kind of see their stories and would certainly go back and watch. But again, this is not our favorites for the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That being the case, I guess I'll take the lead here. I'm breaking it down sort of by division, just cruising through the team because we have virtually every team that's alive listed here. Some were kind of rolling out ahead of time, like the New England Patriots, Denver Broncos. They're alive, obviously under 500, not expecting them to be a factor come playoff time. So then for me in the AFC, I'm looking at 2 teams in 2 divisions, those being the AFC South and the North. In the South, there's Indy and Tennessee. I guess, truthfully, I wouldn't be stunned by either, but just looking at the makeup of those 2 teams, I favor Indianapolis right now. We spoke about them a little earlier. Like I said, Jonathan Taylor is emerging as an upper-tier back, a workhorse back, in conjunction with Nyheim Hines, Jordan Wilkins. They're not devoid of weaponry, especially out of the backfield. They got a great offensive line, and that defense, as we said, Darius Leonard, Justin Houston. I think they're the type of team that is kind of under the radar, built for a run, which is not how you typically, at least the style of play is not what you typically associate with the Indianapolis Colts. For years, we've known them as the Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, you know, high flying passing offenses. This year, they're kind of nitty gritty. I like that about them. They're, to me, a formidable AFC foe, and I think on any given Saturday or Sunday, they could, given a KC, a Buffalo, a Pittsburgh, a run for their money. And then the other team, I would say in the AFC, again, I said the AFC North. For me, it's between Baltimore and Cleveland. Obviously, we watched them have a fantastic game last night, game of the year. For me, I would favor the team who emerged from that game, the Baltimore Ravens. And it's because they have a little more experience in big games. They haven't put it all together in the playoffs yet, but I do think as they round into form here in the home stretch, they'll be a formidable out for anyone. Lamar Jackson is proved yesterday he's the same dynamic threat, MVP level guy. They got three good backs in Dobbins, Edwards, and Mark Ingram whenever he makes his way back on the field. Defensively, they haven't gotten the sack numbers, the takeaways yet, but we do know that they have a talented group between Matthew Judon, Calais Campbell, Patrick Queen, Yannick Ngakoue. I'm not sure if he's still he played last night, right? Yeah, I know he's been a little hit or miss, but then Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey. If they can just get all these guys healthy, they could be a threat in January.
Yep. So I'd like to piggyback off of some of what you said and keep with those same teams. So staying with Baltimore, which is the most recent team that you talked about, there's not only one way to win playoff games, but usually when you're able to run the football effectively, it doesn't hurt your chances. Baltimore is currently first in rushing yards per game. They're tied third for the most rushing touchdowns in the game in the NFL, and they've given up, I guess I should say, the fifth fewest points in the NFL at 21 points per game. So defense is obviously important as well when you start to get to that January time of the year, right? You mentioned Cleveland as well. No slouch in the run game, right? Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt certainly have been doing their thing for a while. Cleveland is currently third in the league in rushing yards per game, and they have the ninth most rushing touchdowns. To kind of revisit the AFC South teams that you had mentioned between Tennessee and Indianapolis, the reason that I would give, I guess, Indianapolis maybe more of an edge over Tennessee, and you kind of touched on this as well, is just the defense. I mean, their defense is really, really good. Again, Tennessee's defense stepped up yesterday, but how much of that was it because they were playing Jacksonville?
Right.
But currently, Indianapolis is ninth in yards per game, sixth in yards allowed on defense. So if you're in the top 10 in both, you're a pretty well-rounded team, where the same is not really said about Tennessee. With that being said, I wouldn't be shocked if I heard that Tennessee made a push. Again, they were the team that nobody wanted to play last year in the playoffs. But I agree with those four teams that you sort of pulled out here. Just as a reminder, these are not our favorites. So there's a reason we're not talking about the Chiefs. I think that we would both probably agree that they are the front runner. They would be the obvious choice for us. But again, this is not the who is going to win the Super Bowl. And same to be said with Buffalo. We wouldn't be shocked about that either. But again, we're focusing on sort of the maybe another tier type of team.
Yeah, that I would say that second tier team that can go on a run. Maybe the teams that'll slot into like the 3, 4, 5, even the wild card seeds, all because I think the parity in the league this year is more evident than ever, and any of these teams could make a run. I would just say Indy, I think, plays a style of offense comparable to Tennessee's, and their defense is significantly better. So that's why I would tend to favor them over Tennessee. Both, I think, are strong playoff teams and will be a tough out for any foe. Switching over to the NFC side of things to pick a few teams that are maybe just a hair more under the radar than the favorites in New Orleans, Green Bay. If you're looking at the NFC West, we know that's one of the best divisions in football this year as well. I think a lot of people are tending to discredit the Rams. Maybe they're not as flashy as they were a couple years ago when Sean McVay was kind of the hot wonderkind when Todd Gurley was at his peak. But I think these Rams have not been a slouch by any measure. They kind of imposed their will on a Patriots team that seemed to be gaining ground the previous few weeks. Jared Goff is maybe not in that upper tier of quarterbacks, but he's managing a game nicely. He's eighth in passing yards at 3,500, 18 touchdowns, 11 picks. Again, numbers that won't wow you. But when you pair it with a playmaking defense led, of course, by Aaron Donald, but then Leonard Floyd as well has been making some plays for them there. I think the Rams, especially with Sean McVay's coaching, are a team we can never rule out. And I think just because of their balance offensively, defensively, I would tend to favor them over, say, the Seattle Seahawks, who obviously with DK, Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson have an explosive passing offense, but I don't know that they're very deep beyond that. We know their struggles in the secondary all year long. Touch on another team here who's currently the 6th seed. A little surprising given their talent level going into the year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, obviously led by Tom Brady and Bruce Arians. I think you take those two names, Tom Brady, Bruce Arians, you can never quite rule them out, even if thus far at 8-5 in the 6th seed, they're maybe a little underachieving in terms of expectations. But again, you look at their quarterback, Tom Brady, 3,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 picks. He's after a bit of a rough stretch there, kind of rounding into the form we all know him to be capable of. You look at the weaponry between Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, maybe all not at the peak of their powers, but again, these are all guys who've experienced winning at the highest level. I think you pair that with a defense led by Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, Levante David, Devin White, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers aren't a team we can rule out. We remember it was only a few weeks ago, I believe they put it on the Green Bay Packers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and with Tampa Bay, I know that you had talked about some of their players not necessarily being in their prime, and the one that's kind of the most obvious, Tom Brady. Yeah, so Father Time is catching up to you now that you're like 75 years old or whatever. Realistically, I think he's 44, 45 years old.
I believe.
Somewhere in the mid 40s range. But if your approach to decline is throwing 30 touchdowns through week 13, it's probably not bad. Again, probably in the conversation to best to ever do it that we mentioned on last week's podcast, just to talk about Tampa Bay's numbers as a whole. Their 7th fewest yards allowed on defense, 11th fewest points given up, and fewest rushing yards per game. So they certainly have a defense that can make some noise in the playoffs come January. The Rams as well, fewest yards allowed on defense and 3rd in points allowed. Obviously, you have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, like two really, really big names on the defensive side of the ball. They're also 5th in team offense. You mentioned Goff kind of the middle of the pack, but kind of what they do offensively and how everything is kind of like predicated on like a run play action type of style. Sean McVay is notorious for that. That translates well into the playoffs. And another team in the NFC, I would be shocked if this team went on a run, but not to kind of count them out. Well, I guess we could count them out, but either I'm going to talk about them anyway. Fuck it. The Arizona Cardinals, they're 4th in team offense. They're 4th in rushing yards per game. They're not going to win the Super Bowl. They're not going to make noise in the playoffs, but they're worth mentioning right now. Kenyon Drake is 5th in yards in the entire league. They also have that guy, Nuke Hopkins, who's, who has 94 receptions for 1,155 yards. They're certainly talented. Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury, we put on our maybe like next year's or next couple of years top 5 head coach quarterback combinations last week. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but they're worth mentioning.
Yeah, I'd say Arizona maybe a year away. But, like you said, they got plenty of playmakers in Murray, Drake, Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk even. Like they got Patrick Peterson, who's kind of quietly had another strong year. He's still in that top corner conversation. Hassan Reddick, another guy I was looking at the numbers yesterday, I believe has 8 sacks kind of quietly. We almost forgot another team I do want to mention, another team probably a year away still, but they're a lot of fun. And I think much like Arizona, if they sneak in, they can give a higher seed fits, and that would be the Miami Dolphins. We saw that on Sunday. They gave the Chiefs fits. They wound up losing, I believe, a 6-point game to them. Tua, 9 touchdowns, just 1 interception. Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, some solid young passing weapons. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball, and I think most impressive and kind of flying under the radar as well is Xavier Howard. We know he's a playmaker in the secondary, 9 interceptions this year. I don't think that's being discussed enough.
Yep, and they also are giving up the second fewest points in the league. That's something that's totally gone under the radar. Like if you told me to name the top 5 teams that are giving up the fewest points in the league, Miami wouldn't have been on there. So it's something that certainly is kind of flying under the radar here. Anything else? Anything we missed? Anything else you wanted to touch on before we move on from these shocking or not being shocked teams making the Super Bowl?
I guess just while I have the numbers up here, I'll just spew them out for you. Anything of interest? You look at the Dolphins defensively; they're kind of getting it done with like a no-name cast of guys. Their leading sackers are Emmanuel Ogbah, who I believe is like a Browns retread, and then Kyle Van Noy. Ogbah's got 8, Van Noy's got 6. Now, obviously, neither was bad previously, but I think it's a testament to the defensive mind that is Brian Flores, how well he's scheming things up for these guys, how well they play for him. And I think Miami is a team, again, much like Arizona, in a year or two more so, we'll be talking about as a legitimate threat to their conference.
Yep, and the quarterback room with Ryan Fitzmagic and Tua Tagovailoa has to be so much fun. I can't even imagine the dynamic in there. So those are the teams that we would not be shocked if we woke up tomorrow and it was February 8th and we found out that those teams made a Super Bowl run. To kind of wrap up the show here, we're going to play a little game we did last week with the start one, bench one, cut one. That wasn't quite close enough to plagiarism for me. So I changed the game today for calling it hike it or spike it. A statement's going to be given and we could agree with it. If we agree with it, we will hike it and receive the ball. If we disagree with it, we will spike it and send it away. I mentioned, again, this might be plagiarism. It is named, it's done on almost every show that I listen to. And it's played with different names. Please don't sue us. This is just a hobby. We're just 2 regular guys. It's not that big. Okay, let's jump right into the hike it or spike it. So the first statement on here, the hike it or spike it. The Bills win a playoff game in 2020. Andy, hike it or spike it?
I'll hike that one. I like that. I kind of was downtrodden on the Bills, mostly because I'm downtrodden on the Steelers. We shouldn't discredit the Bills. Josh Allen's been great. They have playmakers aplenty in the secondary as well as among the pass catchers. They're looking at a home playoff game. I think this team is starting to believe in themselves, starting to get on a bit of a roll. Looking at the standings right now, they'd match up with the Indianapolis Colts, the 6th seed if the season ended today. At Ralph Wilson Stadium, I would favor the Bills in that matchup.
Yeah, I would hike it as well. I think that there's a lot of weapons, and I think that they could beat you a lot of different ways. And they're currently 10th in team offense for yards gained per game, also the 3rd most passing yards per game. And Stephon Diggs has 100 receptions, which is 1st in the NFL. So, he's never made a Pro Bowl.
Stephon Diggs, really?
I heard that the other day. I have not looked into it. I hope that it's false, but that was something that I was like, wow. But
no, that's correct.
That's factual. Okay. So Stephon, don't worry. We will get our many fans. We will get you into the Pro Bowl. We'll have a big push, kind of like they did in Jacksonville for Yannick Ngakoue to make the Pro Bowl as well a couple weeks ago. Okay, let's go on to our next statement. So just to kind of paint a picture here before I read the statement. So we're going to talk about Dak Prescott. It's worth noting, and a lot of people know about the contract situation, but Dak Prescott will become an unrestricted free agent next offseason, unless he's given a second franchise tag for almost $38 million, which, hey, I mean, if you're making that for a year, not too bad. But so our hike it or spike it, Dak Prescott is going to be a Cowboy in 2021. Andy, hike it or spike it?
I'm going to hike that as well. Jerry Jones garners a lot of criticism, often deservedly so. I don't think he's dumb enough to let a veritable franchise quarterback walk out the door. You look at Dak Prescott's numbers, a lot of people want to call him overrated, a game manager, what have you. He, over time, has emerged as the crux of their offense, what makes them run even more so than Zeke Elliott. Dak Prescott, through 4.5 seasons, 17,000 passing yards, 106 touchdowns, 40 picks. On the surface, those numbers are great. As a rusher, as a runner, he's a threat as well. 1,300 rushing yards, 24 touchdowns. Guys like that don't grow on trees. I know they have a lot of money invested in guys like Cooper, like Zeke, like DeMarcus Lawrence. Probably still some tied up in the Zach Martins, Tyron Smiths, the guys who are still hanging on there from what was once a great O-line. But we see without Dak Prescott that the Dallas Cowboys are a shell of the team we expected to contend for the NFC East. And at their talent level going into the year, I think it's kind of been forgotten, but we expected them to be a contender in the NFC.
Yep, I'm gonna hike this one as well. I was really trying to think of reasons to spike it, but I think the most glaring reason to hike it and to agree with it is how poorly the Cowboys have played without him. Obviously, Andy Dalton's been around for a while. There was talks that he was like the best backup in the NFL or whatever. It's apparent that the offense doesn't look the same when Dak Prescott is out. I think he has all the leverage in the world now, and I think you're right with Jerry Jones just kind of saying, Dak, here is a blank check. You write any number on it, and I will pay you that amount of money. And I think he gets his contract that way. So I will hike that Dak Prescott is a Cowboy next year. All right, so we have a couple more here. Chiefs go back-to-back in the Super Bowl and win Super Bowl 55. Sorry. Just to talk about who's done it before, the Pats in 04 and 05. I don't remember the 05 game. I must be putting that one out of my mind. The Steelers in 75, 76, they also did it again in 79, 80. The Packers, Dolphins, 49ers, Cowboys, and Broncos have all also gone back-to-back in Super Bowl. So, Andy, you've gone first the last couple times. I'm going to take this one first. I'm going to spike this. And I'm not going to spike it because it's not like I don't think that the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL. I probably share most people's idea with that the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL. It's just so hard to go back-to-back. I mean, you look at the short list of teams that are on here to do it, to go back-to-back in the Super Bowl. So my reason for it, and again, I think they are the best team in the NFL, but just with how difficult it is, and we've talked about the talent kind of running through the AFC and who knows what's going to happen with COVID. I'm going to spike this one just for the uncertainty and because it's a challenging thing to do.
Yeah, I'm kind of bent out of shape that we keep agreeing here, but like you, I'm going to spike it, and it's not any knock on the Chiefs. Like you said, it is very hard to go back-to-back. And we know he's obviously one of the best coaches of all time, but it took Andy Reid that long to do it once. I am kind of doubtful as to whether or not they'll be able to do it again. At least this year, I think they are set up to contend for a long time, obviously, with Mahomes. But there, as we've mentioned, is a ton of parity in the league this year. You look at the AFC, the top 7 seeds, 1 through 7, could all feasibly make a run, even the team that might be left on the outskirts, whether that's Miami, Cleveland, Baltimore, whoever it is, I think will be I'm not sure, deserving alternate, I guess. The Chiefs this year, they've been in some close games with teams like the Raiders, the Panthers, the Broncos. You can only play the games on your schedule once. To win them, obviously, is the most important thing. But I do question if maybe they might just hit a bump in the road here. Every team's entitled to a bad game. You just kind of expect that at some point the Chiefs will have that. I'm not sure who it is that's going to be able to sneak it away from them, but I'm expecting some team to do so. In the NFL, I think you kind of just learn to always expect the unexpected.
Yeah, and I guess Patrick Mahomes looked some kind of human, or at least his version of human, this past weekend. But still, I mean, they are loaded with talent. Again, this is not a slight to the Chiefs, but we're both spiking this one. It's just so much of a challenge to go back to back. we don't buy it. Okay, we got one more and then a fun one. So Justin Jefferson, it only hurts my heart when I say his name every time because he was taken directly after Jalen Reagor. Jalen Reagor doesn't look bad, but he's not Justin Jefferson. So our last like it or spike it, or our last legitimate one, Justin Jefferson wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Just to kind of put that in perspective, the last receiver to do that was Odell Beckham Jr. in his 2014-2015 year. Justin Jefferson currently has 65 receptions, 1,078 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So, Andy, Justin Jefferson wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Hike it or spike it?
Again, no slight to Jefferson whatsoever, but I'm going to spike that one simply due to the position he plays. Odell, as you mentioned, is the last receiver to do it. But, of course, Odell kind of garnered the fame, the adoration of the fans required to win an Offensive Rookie of the Year award. I think that more than anything is going to hurt Justin Jefferson. Minnesota isn't a big market team. We don't see a ton of them. His fantastic rookie year, it has kind of flew under the radar. I feel like I might be saying that a little too often, but nonetheless, there is some truth to it. And I think the talking heads just tend to favor the quarterbacks this year. Justin Herbert, again, has fantastic performance of his own. I believe you have his numbers somewhere in here. Yeah. 3,400 yards, 3,467, 25 touchdowns, 10 picks. Marvelous rookie year. He might wind up breaking some rookie passing records, and I think just given the position that he plays, will earn the favor of the voters.
Yep. All right. So you know what? All right, I'll do it. I'm gonna spike it, or no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna hike it. I would like to hike it. I will take it. So with Justin Jefferson he's currently 7th in the entire NFL in receiving yards. He has 7 touchdowns as well. I think that if he plays really, really well down the stretch, and if Justin Herbert plays really well down the stretch, I think that Justin Jefferson could edge him out. You're absolutely right that this is a league that favors quarterbacks. We see it year in and year out with the most valuable player award. But you know, I'll go out on a limb, and we've agreed on all the other ones. So I'm going to hike it. I will take that Justin Jefferson wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Last one here, and it's a fun one, has nothing to do with football. Andy, pancakes are better than waffles. Hike it or spike it?
That's a big hike. Pancakes are fluffy and warm, and they just taste like home.
That's fair.
Chocolate chips, blueberries, what have you. You could do the same with waffles, but oh God, waffles fucking slap too. It's not French toast. It's definitely not French toast.
No, it's not. So you are going to hike the pancakes are better than waffles?
And a slight edge, give me the cakes, yeah.
That's fair. I'm going to spike it and put some fried chicken on there, some syrup and some hot sauce, and you have my vote forever. Andy, anything else you got for the people?
Respect. Fatty's gonna fat. One love. Go Steelers.
Absolutely. And thank you, Eagles, for giving me something to smile about all week. All right. So for Andy Watkins, I am Hayden Garashunas. This was another episode of We Like Football. Like, subscribe, rate. We're nowhere else other than YouTube. We're also on Twitter. So check out our Twitter page, We Like Football Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Subscribe to our OnlyFans.
Please don't do that. We like football. See ya.